Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan. Once again, it's time for our monthly check-in videos. So, let's get started. In terms of my watching TV and movies and stuff, I finished watching Percy Jackson Season 1. I did a video about it. Somehow, it was less popular than the first video I did, and I think it's because the title work on it wasn't as good, or because the variety of the videos around it weren't in line with it. I'm not really sure. I'm always curious about how SEO optimization works. I'm not like sure that I've cracked it, but it is what it is. I thought it was fine. The show was fine overall. Like ultimately, it's okay, and I don't like that. I don't hate it, but I don't like it because I feel like it could have been better. Like. And I mentioned this before in both videos that I talked about. The fact that it's not that great, or that it just feels fine, where I feel like it should have been great, makes me think that I'm the issue. That I outgrew Percy Jackson without realizing it, without knowing that this story was no longer for me, right? And so going into it was kind of discovering that fact. And, well, it's not a great thing to realize, right? So that's what it made me feel. Although there were some changes to the story that I don't think needed to be there. The show flowed well. There was nothing really wrong with it. I just didn't like that it wasn't like the original. Because I'm very much of the idea that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And when it comes to stories like Percy Jackson, I don't think there was any need to change anything. I feel like the story was structured well. Maybe there's some issues with how information gets given to you because it's a book, right? And a book is different from how movies give you information. So there had to be more conversations than before, but that's not really what it felt like they did. It felt like they modernized Percy Jackson a bit. Although Percy Jackson's only about 20 years old, you can argue that a lot has changed in those 20 years, maybe more so than things changed in earlier generations. I'm not really sure. And I feel like some of the changes were fine. They really didn't impact anything. And some of the other changes made me like characters a little bit less. I think that specifically Percy Jackson's mom being someone that felt exasperated with her life instead of like, what's it called? I don't remember how I worded it, but Percy Jackson's mom to the show feels like she's not sure what she's doing. She's just hoping that it's the best thing to do. Whereas in the books, it really felt more like Percy Jackson's mom knew fully what she was doing, was, destroyed by these facts because she lived with an abusive partner, but had this like strength to bear it so that her son would be better off, right? Which is not really the same type of vibe that I get from the show. And I feel like the book is better. Like that shows the strength of character that Percy Jackson's mom has much better than the version we got in the show. However, some of the stuff that they did change for the show, I liked, even if I didn't necessarily like that it was different from the book, right? So the Medusa story, the modern interpretation was fine. I actually like it. I think it's cool to kind of change the dynamic of the situation from, being punished for daring to offend Athena into being turned into a monster in order to give her power over herself, right? Like give her agency through power. I enjoy that idea. I don't necessarily think it fit with the characters that were presented in the show, but I like the conversation that she had with Percy that illustrated this point, right? So I like her. The conversation that Percy's mom Sally has with Poseidon in the penultimate episode was also good. I really appreciate that. I think that would be something that would have happened in the book if the books had focused on Sally a bit more, right? So yeah, otherwise, I've been watching Reacher with my roommate, one of my roommates, and man, Reacher is so cool. We're almost done with the second season. We have one episode left, and it's such a good show. Like, I don't know why it doesn't seem like anyone talks about this show. Like, I have not heard anyone mention anything except one person talk about this show. And that person is Christian Harloff, and his job is to talk about movies and TV, right? So it makes sense he would mention it, but none of the other movie and show pundits that I watch on YouTube have mentioned Reacher. And I decided to check it out because me and my roommate were trying to find something to watch. And I'm so glad we did, because this is awesome. Like, it has a lot of action. It has interesting characters. The settings are nice and cool, even if they're not necessarily super exciting. You know, a small city or a small town in the middle of Georgia and, you know, the outskirts of New York are not necessarily exciting settings, but they're very well made. I really like how the stories function and flow and the characters that are introduced. I think it's a well-made show. And Reacher himself is a very complex and interesting character. Me and my roommate constantly discuss whether he, you know, like, what is up with him, because he's not like normal to us. He reads kind of neurodivergent, whether that is like he has autism or Asperger's or something like that, or he has like severe PTSD. We're not really sure, and that is exciting and interesting to discuss with my roommate. It's a cool point of discussion, and it's also interesting that throughout all of this kind of weird way that he has to communicate and these weird like rules and functions to his life that don't really make sense for normal people, for your average person, I think is a better way to phrase that. He manages to have an element of romance with some female characters. He has a great partnership and friendship with another of the characters. He has depth and width to him. Like he has the ability to connect with people in a way that it feels really interesting, right? And I really like this show. I think that there is a lot of interesting stuff in terms of character. And I also will, like, I think every time I watch Reacher, I feel like it put him in a suit and a mask, and this is what Master Chief should be, right? Like, he has that same vibe, that kind of like dry, like, you're not really sure if he's okay kind of vibe that I feel like Master Chief has. And now that the Halo show is out again, and everyone's telling me that it's still bad, I feel like maybe Reacher should have been the actor for the job, and he would have probably not complained about having to wear a helmet, right? So, yeah, I really like this show. I think it's great. You guys should watch it. Then I watched a movie. I watched The Marvels. Now, I was not a big fan of the Miss Marvel show. I didn't hate it. I actually found it to be pretty refreshing and interesting. It really gave me nice, like, YA show vibes, like something from the CW. But I wasn't really interested in the character. I don't really have an interest in Kamala Khan. And I felt like some of the ethnic stuff that was added in the show didn't feel genuine. So I'm not, Pakistani or Middle Eastern or what is she? We'll just stick with Pakistani. I'm pretty sure she's Pakistani. I'm not from those regions of the world, right? I'm from Mexico. It's pretty different, but it's also pretty similar in the ways that, family structures and social cues kind of work between those two cultures. And a lot of what was shown in the few episodes that I saw of the show didn't feel real, even though everyone was saying that it was so realistic. And that sucks. So I didn't really finish watching it. And I was not a fan of the Captain Marvel movie. I liked some of the scenes in that movie, and I liked Samuel L. Jackson in that movie, but I didn't really like the character. And I didn't like her in other, Marvel movies, right? But in this movie, in The Marvels, I really enjoyed all three of the female characters, all three of the main female leads. I liked the family dynamic. I enjoyed Samuel L. Jackson's performance. I found the villain character to be really pretty, but not very meaningful. Like, she was not... Like, I understood where she was coming from, but I feel like if you have the technology to steal people's resources from other planets via warp holes, why would you bother to do that? Like, it feels like it's much easier and less likely to land you, a superhero at your door if you just stole it from planets that didn't have people living on them, right? Like it doesn't make sense. Like the plans are stupid. And so I don't like the villain, right? But the dynamic between the three characters was great. The diversity of the characters was great. The way they acted was really wonderful. I do have some complaints about the movie. First of all, I think that there was a usage of these like CGI face shots, or maybe they're not CGI, but they're just like at a bad angle. Like the GoPro or whatever they used to film it feels like it's angled like wrong, badly. And it makes it so that the actors' faces look really ugly. And I don't think that that's a good thing in a movie, even if it might be realistic, right? Like, we're watching a movie about superheroes. Not everything has to be realistic, and the camera angles should not be what you decide to be realistic, right? That should be less real. That should be a little bit more tweaked so that the characters always look good while they're flying, and doing these like high speed motions, right? The other thing is that the CGI sometimes is really, really noticeable, and some of the fight choreography, although usually phenomenal, was very clearly badly done in moments where it felt really easy to tell, and that should have been hidden because there was interesting, important things happening during that scene, right? Like there was a scene where they were at the at this control panel place, and there's an action scene happening as information is being given, and you're looking at the action because you're just able to listen to it, to the information separately, right? And the action is actually very weak in this moment, where you see these like really ugly telegraphed, like very clearly not going to land punches thrown by Captain Marvel, and just that doesn't work. It looks bad, right? But otherwise, I think it was fun. I really enjoyed myself. I laughed a lot. And there was these two really great moments in the movie where Monica Rambeau's character has these emotional situations, right? And I almost cried during both of them. I found them to be very powerful, right? Like, I don't really have an attachment to Monica Rambeau, but the moments that she was going through felt very real. Like, I almost cried when she, saw the last moment between her mom and Captain Marvel. And I almost cried when she finds her mom again at the end of the movie, and it turns out that it's not her mom, and she's like upset about it, right? I really like the scenes, and I generally enjoyed this movie a lot. So you guys should check it out. Yeah, so that's it for that. Let's move on to novels and books and comics, right? So in terms of novels, in terms of what I've been reading digitally, I was supposed to read Outlander and a few other things. I actually scrapped all of that by accident. I didn't mean to, but I kind of went off script here because I started reading Unsold, book 1 in the Cradle series, and I just couldn't stop myself. I had a box set like thing, so it's called the Path, the Foundation or something. Cradle book set 1 Foundation. That's the name of it. It's the first arc in the story. It's the first 3 books: Unsold, Soulsmith, and Black Flame. And I read all 3 of them, one after the other. I really, really love them. Review number 2 should come out tomorrow. Review number 1 came out last week. And review number 3 should come out later this month, as well as a separate video where I just discuss my thoughts on the series so far, my thoughts on this first arc. And, well, Cradle is phenomenal. I had such a fun time with it. There are definitely issues with it. It is not perfect, but it is super enjoyable. Like, the bad is pretty minimal, and it's mostly just from the fact that the author is not perfectly experienced at this point, right? Like, this is still early in his career, and it wasn't something that he was all that sure was going to be the main series that he wrote, right? But it got really popular. People liked it, and so he had to keep writing in it, which is pretty common. Tarzan's author, Edgar Rice Burroughs, had the same thing happen to him. He wrote Tarzan, it became really popular, so he had to write more. And eventually it got so popular that he had to write so many books that he ended up rehashing storylines later on, right? So that's why out of the 24 Tarzan books, only about 10 of them are properly good, right? Because those are the ones that he wrote before he just had to do more of them to keep up with the demand for them, right? So I'm not sure that that's what happened here with Will White. I don't really think so. Although I have heard bad reviews about the last 3 books in the series, but the first 3 books are phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed them. I loved them. I thought that the premise was good, which is basically it's like Black Clover. The premise is Black Clover, a boy with no magic, or My Hero Academia. A boy in a magic world with no magic has to find a way to make magic work for him, right? Very good, very interesting. He lives in this Naruto-esque society, and he's at the bottom of the ladder, and he's basically only allowed to live because it would be dishonorable to kill him. But if someone decides to kill him, nothing would really happen to them, except that everyone would know that they're not that honorable, right? So there's like a give and take there to killing him, and so people decide to not do so. But he is weak. He is not a meaningful member of their society that's so focused on power, right? Eventually, he has an apparition from God, basically. An angel comes down from the heavens to talk to him and reveals the future of his life, and that it's going to suck. Or that it's actually going to be quite good, but the ending of his life will coincide with the ending of his world, basically. Or all of the ending of the region of the world that he calls his own, that he calls home. And in order to change that fate, he decides to embark on a journey to find a way to become more powerful, than anyone that he knows, right? And so he embarks on this journey, and it takes him to this girl called Yeren, and then it takes him out of the Sacred Valley, which is where he lives, and he finds out that his valley is full of weak people, that he is the weakest of the weak people in his valley, but everyone in his valley is inferior to anyone that lives outside of it, because of their weird structural rules and the fact that they don't actually know sacred art, the martial arts magic system, the way that they're supposed to. And so he goes on this journey with this girl, and he ends up at this weird ruin place, and he ends up gaining a rival, and then he ends up meeting a mentor character, a Jiraiya type character. Maybe Jiraiya is a bit too pervy for 8th Ed, but that type of character. And Yeren is kind of like Sasuke, and Jaelong is kind of like Itachi, right? It's that kind of vibe. And he meets his other mentor, Lady Geisha, or Fisher Geisha, who's basically like Lady Chiyo. And it's really great. I have a lot of fun with this series. It's a little bit like Naruto. It's a little bit like Stormlight Archive. It's a little bit like Bleach. It's a little bit like, Black Clover and My Hero. And I love it. I think it's wonderful and phenomenal and really enjoyable. And eventually we have an animal master spirit character, like how in Avatar: The Last Airbender, they learn from the dragons, same kind of idea here, and it's awesome. And I really, really love this series. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. So that's it for the novels and stuff like that. Let's move on to comic books here. So I had a bunch of comic books that I said I was going to read this month. I have not really started reading them, although I have perused through them quite a bit. But these are the comic books that I bought, the single issue comic books that I bought this month so far that I read. So let's start with Rogue Sun number 18. This is the end of the story arc, and that means that we're gonna have a little bit of a break from Rogue Sun for a few weeks. For a few months. And this was really good. It was a really nice ending. It brings us back to the status quo inserted at the beginning of the story, and it allows us to reset the character in a way that I find very satisfying, and it's really, really enjoyable. I thought it was a great job. I also really love this cover. It like it manages to capture the idea of Rogue Sun really, really well. So yeah, here we have Sheena number 5. This is the last book in the series. I love this cover. I might actually put this up on my wall. And I like the art style, finally. I really enjoyed the art style here at the end. But the story felt kind of weak. Not as weak as many of the Red Sonja stories that I've read, but definitely weaker than the first one. The first 10 issue series that I read when I first started collecting, right? That Sheena series. However, it was significantly better than the Barbarella series. So, in general, I think that this was pretty enjoyable. I will eventually do a review for it, but I'm not really sure when. But it should be sometime later this year. We have Dead Lucky number 11. This is nearly the end of the story, I think. or maybe it's halfway through this arc. I can't remember, but this was a good issue. Basically, this guy becomes a hybrid human android kind of villain character, and I'm excited to see where that goes. Here's Red Sonja number 7 and Red Sonja number 6, and it managed to do a good job at getting me interested in the story again, because basically the arc ended and the new one started in this kind of duet, right? So the story of Thord Varg ends. He dies. Sonja releases gods onto the world, which is bad, and Kulan Gath becomes mortal again. He comes back from limbo and he exists in the world. So that's the end of the first arc, more or less. And the beginning of the next arc, which is issue 7, is Kulan Gath now has followers and he is starting to gain power, and this is bad. And at the same time, Sonja is going to have to confront a bunch of gods that she accidentally released at the end of the last arc. So seems pretty interesting. I'm very excited to see where this goes. Here's Godzilla versus the Justice League number 3. I love this cover. It looks so awesome. And here is number 4. And I find these to be enjoyable. I actually like the third one a little bit more than the fourth one, although the fourth one had some fun in it, which I thought was cool. They release a Kraken. We see Godzilla fighting this giant ocean titan. And in general, I'm having fun with these. I like the art style. I like the aspect of the crossover, but I'm not really sure that it's doing that great of a job at being exciting. Like it's enjoyable, but it's not like I should be saying, holy shit, that's awesome every time I read one of these issues. And I don't think that that's the case. I'm saying like, oh, that was kind of cool, more or less, more often than not. And I'm not sure that that is the right thing that should be happening, right? So I feel like they should have done a better job with this story. However, it's nearly over. There's only 3 more months to go on it. And I will continue to collect it until the end, because I find it to be enjoyable enough to at least give it till the end. So I will do so. Here's Conan number 7. This is nearly the end. This is the penultimate issue of the second arc. The first arc already got its book released. It's trade paperback released. And I actually really like this issue a lot. I didn't have any problems with the coloring this time. I found it to be fine. Maybe I'm getting used to it. I'm not really sure. I still really enjoy the artwork. However, the storytelling in this one was really, really great. And the ending was awesome. Like, I was very shocked by the ending. I can't wait for the next issue, and I love this cover. Overall, really, really good stuff here. Jim Sub and Doug did a great job with this one. So, yeah. And finally, we have Thundercats, because they're on the loose. Oops, sorry. Something else is on the loose. One of these, what's it called? Bags just broke. So, yeah, anyway. Thundercats, number 1. This is a relaunch, retelling, reimagining of the original Thundercats story. And I am a pretty big Thundercats fan. I am not someone that is super into the lore of Thundercats or anything like that, but I have a lot of childhood memories associated with Thundercats. Now, I'm only 24, and most people that would say that they have Thundercats as one of their childhood memories are probably in their 40s. Now, why do I have Thundercats in my childhood memories? Well, it's because when I was a child, I would go to Mexico, usually during the summers. I would stay in Mexico for a few months at a time. When my parents were able to take us there, and we could stay in Mexico safely with no issues for a long time. We'd stay there, and because we didn't have cable, because there was no point in getting cable for Mexico if no one was going to use it for 10 months out of the year, we only had access to the national broadcast channels, right? The normal ones. And one of these channels was called Channel 5, El Canal 5, and it had 2 important kids segments, one in the morning and one in the early afternoon. And the morning show, in the morning segment, usually played One Piece, Thundercats, and some Cartoon Network cartoons. And I would always watch Thundercats. I didn't really care too much about One Piece as a kid, but I would always watch the Thundercats shows. And even though I didn't really know what the hell was going on most of the time, I really loved the designs. I loved the opening sequence. I really loved the idea of Thundercats. And in 2011, when they released the show, I would watch the show, the new show, on Cartoon Network. I never got to finish it. I started watching it on Netflix once. I never got to finish it then. And I am constantly looking for a Blu-ray copy of it that I can buy so I can finish watching it myself now, although I know that it was never finished. However, I am been a fan of Thundercats for a while, and so when this came out, I had to get it because I've been putting out into Twitter for a few years in a row that I've been wanting some Thundercats comic books at some point, and you know, the comic book gods shone their light on me and gave it to me, and I really enjoyed this. I don't necessarily think the artwork is my favorite, however, it is pretty enjoyable. It works really well for the Thundercats. The character designs are updated. They're different from what you're used to, but not so different that they're horrifying, except for Scarf. His face gives me nightmares. He looks like a human that just has a lot of fur, and it's really creepy because I don't think Scarf should look like that. But everything else works really well. I loved this first issue. However, I feel like this issue was so short. It went by so fast. It was crazy. Like I was, I guess, really into it because I felt like I flipped the pages twice and I was already at the end. And I don't think that it was that short. It definitely felt like a full-length comic book, but I just went through it so quickly that it felt really short. So I will be doing a review for this at some point here in the next couple days, and hopefully you guys will watch it. So let's finally look at the manga here. So these are going to be out of order, but who cares? Here's 2.5 dimensional seduction, or 2.5 dimension seduction. I'm not really sure what to call it. I don't think that the title rolls off the tongue very easily, but this is fun. This is a really ecchi version of My Dress Up Darling, which is already an ecchi show, or an ecchi, series, IP, whatever you want to call it. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. I actually found the character work for Okumura more interesting than the ecchi stuff. The ecchi stuff is good. Don't get me wrong. It's enjoyable and very out there. But Okumura's kind of sad vibes that he has at the beginning were very relatable. This idea that you're friends with upperclassmen, and through whatever happens, they leave, and you're the only one left, and you're kind of lost. You don't know really what's going on. I had some sort of experience like that when I was in high school. I was really friends with the kids that were in the year above me, who were the first kids that ever went to our school. I mean, I was in the same kind of like situation. I was one of the first kids that ever went to my school, but I was a year younger than them, and I was really good friends with a few of them. The thing is that they graduated, and for the last year of my high school, I felt like I was missing part of my friends, and it felt kind of bad. Like I didn't really love that aspect of my last year of high school, but it was like, it is what it is. It happens, and I don't really talk to any of these people anymore, but the fact that they were so important to me for so many years, and then they just weren't there, sucks. And Okumura, and the main character in this story, manages to portray that feeling really well. So I really appreciated that. Then he meets a girl who happens to like the same waifus that he does. Not only does she like the same waifus that he does, she also wants to cosplay them, and she needs help taking pictures of her cosplay for some presentation that she wants to do. And so Okumura, being the president of the manga club, and Lailisa being the only other member of the manga club, team up to do this. And this leads to Okumura kind of growing as a person, because he swore off real women. He was like, I only want 2D women. However, when he sees this girl who happens to embody the character that he loves, he's struck. He is not sure if he can, actually go through with his vow. Now, this is kind of not great because he's like fetishizing the act of cosplay, which you can have, your own ideas on. However, I don't think it's great because he is imposing his love of a character over his interest in a real girl. And I don't necessarily think that's healthy, but I think that that's part of the point of this story. And so I'm interested to see where it goes. Overall, I really enjoyed this up until the end, where we get introduced to a third character. Her name is Mikasi or Mikari or something. And she happens to be Okumura's childhood friend, who has liked him, had a crush on him forever, and he's never really paid attention to her. And now she has a love rivalry with Lailisa because like Lisa manages to inspire interest, real interest, romantic interest out of Okumura, and it's something that Mikari has never been able to do. And so there's a rivalry. Now, I didn't really dislike the character. I thought that the character was good. I didn't really like the introduction of the rivalry. I don't think that it was the right moment to do so. So those are my thoughts on that. We have Virgin Love, which was actually really good. I enjoyed it. However, there was kind of a few problems here that I had. One, I don't like reality TV in general. I don't like competition shows in general. Some of them I do, some of them, most of them I don't. And this manages to include both of those things into manga. The art style is great. The storyline is interesting. However, I feel like the storyline butchers itself. It actually feels like it shouldn't happen anymore, because she meets this guy and they become friends and they clearly want to date each other, or at least he clearly wants to date her. And because he doesn't have the guts to ask her, she manages to rope him into this reality TV show, right? And so I feel like the story shot itself in the foot by introducing like the end pairing so quickly in a way that could have happened outside of the show. And so I feel like, I don't know how to word this properly, so bear with me. I think that having a premise for your story and then showing the answer to your premise before you actually get to the point of your premise is bad. Let me reiterate this by actually using what happened in this book. The premise of this book is she is a virgin and she's 26 and she wants to find someone to fall in love with and have sex with and move on with her life with, right? In order to do this, she decides to go on a reality TV show, Love House thing, where she's gonna be paired up with 5 other people, 2 other women and 3 men, and they're gonna figure out if they can fall in love with anyone in this house. Before they manage to get to this house, she makes a strong, powerful connection with this guy that works at the bookstore she always shops, and his name is Tanaka. Tanaka is clearly interested in her, respects her, and has a healthy appreciation for who she is as a person, and she is aware of this to an extent, and she forces him to go with her to this Love House thing. And so I feel like the fact that they meet before they get to the Love House makes it so that the story feels like it shouldn't be happening, because the answer to her problems already exists, and she could have just, gotten it without having to go through the premise, right? And so I don't think that that's good. There's also a character here that is 19. She's 26. She makes jokes that come off as a comedy bit or a gag that should not be, where she makes comments about how the fact that she might date him and enjoy her date with him and maybe have sex with him would lead to her feeling like she was committing statutory rape. And then, after she makes this realization, this feeling, she goes on a date with him. And she, clearly has interest in pursuing this relationship with him and feelings with him. This is bad. I don't like this. You cannot have your main character, who's supposed to be a really great person, because that's what they tell us for the whole book, realize that she might be in a situation that goes against her moral code and that goes against the law according to her, and then decide to follow through with it anyways. That is not good. I don't like that style. If it had not been mentioned at all, I might have thought, oh, she's going out with someone that's really young for her, that's maybe not good. But I wouldn't have not had any issues with it because they sidestepped the problem, right? They tried to lampshade the issue and instead made the character look like a shitty person. And I don't think that that's good. So those are my thoughts on that one. We have Seal of the Celestial Shadows. The only complaint I have here is that there's color pages at the beginning that are clearly not in color, even though they should be, and that sucks. However, the story is great. I really, really loved it. I love the artwork. I like the story. I like the concept. I like the world building. Everything is awesome, except for the lack of color pages. And I do have some issues with some of the ideas here, mostly because I feel like in any other country or in any other story, the fact that the main character has issues touching metal would immediately be seen as a positive or something that can be exploited instead of this like debilitating curse. And I don't know if this is because Japan is so set in its ways, especially in the time period that is being presented here, that anything that is against tradition is bad, or if it's like forced for the sake of conflict in the story. Either way is bad, but it is an acceptable level of badness. I just feel like if a Western story wrote this, or if a Western author wrote this story, they would immediately go with, I was born with a curse, but I made it a strength immediately, right? Like the story would start after he realized that it was good for him. And this story starts before that, where he realizes, or where he thinks it's a debilitating situation because it makes his life a little bit harder. But dude, you live in Edo, Japan. What like massive important steel objects do you use, or metal objects do you use in your life? A sword? Like that's it, basically a razor, maybe some shears to cut hair. Those are not like important enough to feel like you're debilitated, right? Like to feel like you're cursed. If you lived in the modern world and you couldn't use a car or a phone or a computer or anything that has metal in it, I would understand. But because of the setting, it feels like pretty ridiculous for him to care that much, right? Like his buttons, if he has any buttons on any of his clothing, would be made of like ivory or shell or, you know, wood or something. They wouldn't be metal. You know, anything that he would use would probably not be metal. It'd usually be stone or wood. Like the only thing that he can't use is a sword, a razor, and maybe, you know, utensils, but chopsticks are made of wood. So, and he acts like his life is over. So I do have some issues with that, but it's not that bad. Like overall, the fact that it spends so much time doing that makes the ending of the book a lot more impactful. And so I'm willing to let it go, or willing to admit that it's there, but also not that bad because it does work in the end. I just feel like a lot of time was spent talking about the fact that it's a curse, when as a samurai, I feel like it might actually be a positive because you can still make armor out of wood or stone or something else. It might be heavier to wear than, you know, metal, but it would work. He could make another weapon out of something else. You know, he could use a stone rod or a wooden dowel or something as a sword, which he does. He uses a bokken. He could find a different way to make a spear, you know, or something like that. He wouldn't have to use a sword, but all of his enemies would be samurai that do use swords, at least the way that they're set up here in the story. And so, in fact, he would actually be greater than them because he would be able to use a sword because he practices with his bokken a lot. And he would be able to attack them, and he wouldn't be able to be defeated by them because no metal can touch him. So, like, if anything, he should be the greatest samurai, not the worst one, right? So, those are my thoughts there. Then I read Blue Lock number 10, and I loved it. I really enjoyed the story. I've already read this before, and I had a great time reading this. So, yeah, nothing much to say here since I've already reviewed it before. Great. I can't wait for the next one, which comes out next month. Here's Soul Leveling number 8. This felt really, really fast compared to all the other Soul Leveling comic books that I've read so far. However, I really liked it. I thought that it was great that I finally got there because we're finally getting to the point where the story gets to its twist. And that twist is great in my opinion. It's awesome. So I can't wait to get there. I want to see what it looks like in comic book format, and it's going to be exciting, right? So yeah, there we have Record of Ragnarok number 9. This is the Shiva story, origin story that's not really realistic, or that doesn't really match with the current mythology / religion that we have for this character. So there's some issues there. I really feel like he should have been on the cover, not Raiden, but you know what it is what it is. However, I really enjoyed this. I really like that fake story that they gave Shiva. I think it's fun, it's interesting, and also is a better way to contradict or maybe juxtapose against Raiden Tamemon, because it's like Shiva is the embodiment of thousands of people, like their spiritual embodiments, right? Like their ideologies are within him. And then Raiden Tamemon has the body that has the power of so many people, even though he is a singular entity, right? So I think that there's an interesting juxtaposition there between the physical power of hundreds of people versus the mental desires of some like thousands of people, right? Like there's something there that I feel like is cool, and it might have not existed if they went with the real story for Shiba, right? So yeah, and then I've been reading Booty Royale. I read the first half of the story, and well, it's ridiculous. It's insane. It's actually really enjoyable. The artwork is phenomenal, although some of the elements in the story are not my favorite. Basically the story is about idols, specifically about this one idol who starts as a gravure model, then decides she wants to do singing, or actually she wanted to do singing, but before she could do that, she started as a gravure model. They're trying to push her into adult videos, and she wants to avoid them, and so she has to do what she can to become popular outside of that kind of genre, if you want to call it that, outside of that medium. And she has to do whatever she can, and it turns out that being hot and good at martial arts works out. And also, it sucks because she's actually bad at singing, even though she wanted to be a singer, right? So, it kind of reminds me of Penny from The Big Bang Theory, a little bit, not very much. This is a lot worse than the kind of situations Penny finds herself in, but same kind of concept. You know, a girl with dreams that kind of doesn't really get to experience those dreams because, you know, things happen around her that don't let her. But the main character is interesting. There's a main female side character who happens to be in adult videos, and she also is fun and interesting. And a lot of the moments in this story are good. However, like I said, I don't like the sleazy idol, what's it called? Like representative that she has. I don't like him as a character, although he kind of gets better later when he realizes, oh, there is a way to make money with this actress or this talent without having to push her into adult video. And so he becomes better after a while, but there's a lot of stuff here that is clearly bad in a way that is not, like as an American, some of the jokes here don't land because they feel, one, too realistic to what happens in Japan, and two, too realistic to what happens here in the US in terms of like, you know, how people get, you know, promoted in media companies and stuff like that, and the kind of horrors of having to rely on others to be pulled up, like your talent is not the only thing that matters in like an entertainment industry. But also, like, just the way it's presented doesn't feel funny, even though it's clearly supposed to be. And I feel like it feels almost like this artist, although very good at his job, kind of doesn't understand or can't read the room properly, if that makes sense. Now, the sensibilities of Japan are different. The kind of style of comedy is different. The social understanding of these types of issues is different. So I understand that it might not, you know, work that way. Like, it might be something that in Japan is considered funny. And honestly, maybe I would consider it funny in other circumstances, but not in the circumstance here, which is, you know, we're following this main character. She's a great, nice person. She's doing her best to provide for her family. She's, you know, like, there's nothing bad about her. And then she's put in these horrible situations, and these situations are played out for laughs, even though they're clearly horrible and also kind of realistic to what happens in the world. And it feels uncomfortable to read, right? So I still am going to continue, and probably I'll finish collecting the series. I actually enjoy it quite a bit, although every couple chapters or so I'm like, oof, this is bad. I take a break for a little bit, I come back, finish reading it, and move on to a better chapter, and it works out, right? But this is definitely not going to be for many people. It really depends on your preferences. For me, the character and the artwork managed to overcome the issues that are clear in some of the storylines, right? So, yeah. So yeah, that's the ending for this month's check-in. I did not expect it to go on for 45 minutes, but that's how it is. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys later.